Okay. uh, good afternoon for everybody. I'm Mohamed ElGabry. I'm from Egypt, seismologist from Egypt, and currently I'm chairing the African Seismological Commission. I will just share some ideas about policy and seismology in our African context. Um, as you all know, Africa is challenged by several active seismic zones, but not only the active rifting or the subduction zone in Eastern Mediterranean or Western Mediterranean, but even intraplate earthquakes poses a considerable hazard in our African context. In fact, several of the deadly recorded earthquakes were recorded of course, in the urban areas, which is hosts the major casualties, like Cairo earthquake in 1992 or Boumerdas earthquake in Algiers, and lately Marrakesh, Khartoum earthquake in 1990, Mozambique earthquake. Several of these earthquakes happened with high casualty rates because of the urbanizations. So we are talking about a system that merges a risk system which is really high vulnerability, considerable exposure, mm, maybe moderate hazard, moderate to high hazard, but also very poor management. So this is a context we are having. This is where Africa stands. And there is another layer which is making all of this more complicated is in many cases civil unrest or the high fragility of the society. I will try to go through this and also to go from whatever we think as a traditional seismologist, talking about hazard curves, about earthquake catalog, magnitude homogenization, all of these terms we are all seismologists feeling into what the society is looking for, what's DDR-oriented seismology, let's say, where real-time and early warning system, automatic alerts, impact forecasting, integrating all of this into policies and into actions within the community. To transit from this to that is real challenges, not only from political point of view, but even from academic point of view. We are as academician, and most of the African seismologist is more comfortable in the area of doing research, homogenizing catalog. This is very important, of course, but still we are having this gap we need to fill. Of course, this is a famous El House earthquake in Morocco in 2023. This earthquake was 6.8 in magnitude. It was in an area, mm, let's say, there was questionable about the earthquake location, if this area is seismically active or not, if we have a blind fault or not. It was not so far from 1960 earthquake, Agadir earthquake, but it was in a different zone, which was considered very low seismicity. This earthquake was very dramatic. The dust toll approached almost 3,000. Injuries was very high. More than 300,000 were displaced. There was no early warning for that. There was very late action. The rural mountain communities has suffered most of the impact. In some cases, some of the villages, it took several hours, up to days, until rescue could approach. There was a delay in international aid. Even there was huge damage in informal housing, but even what was considered as engineered houses, as you can see in these images, this is just before. This is a new rebuilt concrete building which totally demolished. And it was not totally demolished because of the very high acceleration, but comparing to nearby, it was poorly engineered. So it was a very costly lesson how we need to review everything from our standing to the seismic hazard to our building code enforcement and to transition from hazard to risk. Another earthquake, Tanzania earthquake in 2016. This earthquake was moderate earthquake, 5.9. It has triggered 16 casualties, but it has very huge impact in displacement. And we have to take care about if forced displacement in our African context because of the scarcity of resources and conflict in some region. This displacement could lead to disaster larger than the earthquake disaster itself. So it's some sort of cascading effect which we are talking about. Of course, there was no early warning. Until now, in all Africa, we don't have early warning system for Africa. But within this, all of this, we are challenging that even recording such events is not that accurate because of the less stations in all over Africa. Right now, the station is expensive. The funding is very limited. Even if the station could be bought and erected, the challenge to maintain is really huge. So we are in a context where the coverage is very poor. The network coverage is very poor. We are far behind to approach a proper network that capable of processing early warning even. So, as I said, we are having burdens of not only maintaining installing the networks, but also maintaining them, the sparse, the communication cost, and of course the challenges in logistics in some areas, like in Sudan right now, the whole network was destroyed because of the
nanjye ndi
war.
kubona nabaye
And,
wosumeni maze
and I think
abasumeni
somebody
barimo
is
hano ni benshi pe
muted. It's so coming back to the context, as I said, in Sudan, we have lost almost 15 stations in the last war, and until today, it's not possible to reinstall them because of the ongoing war in area. And Sudan is not a case. Sudan is an example. We have the same in Eastern Congo in different locations. So we are having a moderate hazard, but we have a high exposure. We have a high vulnerability. We have more than 700 million across Africa living in active seismic areas. We have losses, annual losses of 15 billion. This is from the total natural disaster in Africa. This is according to UNDRR JAR assessment. And it's very few functional seismic network. In many countries, it's only some stations available. We are far beyond in Sunday framework. We are also far beyond in even in alarming in best cases, if we are having a very good network in one country, the major earthquake alarming time is more than 6 minutes in the best cases, and this is far beyond any early warning. If we look to the fragility, this is the list of the 20 most fragile countries in the world. Unfortunately, out of these 20, 14 countries are African. So we have huge fragility, we have active conflict, governance deficit, we have informal settlements in all of the African cities from north to south. Within this context, we are facing very limited. According to the World Bank, we are having 22 countries out of 54 African nations are already in armed conflict. This situation put another layer of a challenge in developing what we are hoping, not early warning system, even developing a monitoring system, a sustainable monitoring system. It is not there. Today, we know that the Eastern Congo, where Goma Observatory is really suffering to maintain their stations. I'm in contact with colleagues there. They are doing, I can see hero things because they are maintaining, trying to maintain the network working in this where the M23 militia is controlling the country, and it's really hard to do. The same in Sudan, in Somalia, we are having more. In Mali, the French operated a station with was drawn after the 2021 coup. In many of all African contexts, we are facing a dramatic problem of decreasing in the monitoring station. Coming to the institutional fragmentation, what's the governance? What's the problem? In most of our African contexts, seismic monitoring is not a responsibility for an authority. So we have a governance issue. Sometimes it's related with meteorological agencies, sometimes with geological survey, sometimes it's university department. There is no national authority is responsible for monitoring and early warning. In very rare cases in African countries that you have such authority. The budget discontinuity, because it's only annual budget cycle. There is no way to have a multi-year infrastructure planning. Even in the best funded countries, this is the case. So from governance, from budget, from interagency, in some countries we have several agencies are running different stations and even not sharing their information or their data. And of course, the political interference, which had another layer where you don't have enough authority in order to be politically or provide the communities with the right information in the right time. So there is a very, let's say, in political way, to say it in a diplomatic or a political way, there is a political interference. Of course, we are knowing that most of the African cities are rapidly urbanized. They are growing high and tall high-rise building, extended bridges, and in addition to informal settlements. So the population is increasing, the urbanization is increasing, and we are increasing the vulnerability of our and exposures and driving to fragile. So we are having 20 mega cities in the African cities, which has more than exceeding 10 millions population, which is in very active seismic areas. And right now, we need to think not only about the seismic hazard or seismic risk as a component separated from all the other components. Like right now, the climate risks is very high, and the impact of climate on Africa is very high. And we can see a nexus between seismic and climate in four aspects. First, of course, the climate-induced slope instabilities because of the heavy rainfalls and slope instability and cascading hazard. If we could have an earthquake in a very unstable area, it could trigger also slope failures. Reservoir-induced seismicity. We have more than 100 dams, and of course, the cascading disaster scenarios and vulnerability amplification, especially in mass displacement. So it's important to look into the different aspects. In the IPCC report in 2022, there is explicitly identifying the compound climate and geophysical hazards as an emerging risk category requiring integrated assessment framework. Africa is the highest priority region for that. So the combination of climate and geophysical risks is very important. And the problem of the climate displacement as increasing the exposure, because right now we are having in Africa, we are talking about this year, there was 30 million displaced in this year. So it's a huge number. And the numbers until 2050 is expected to exceed 260 million of internal migrant because of the climate. These migrants are moved into informal settlements, are moved to on the peripheries of the big cities. So these cities are increasing its fragility and its people are vulnerable to seismic actions. I can give examples of many cities around Africa having so, but no need because it's almost happening everywhere. So we are having a very complicated vulnerability. We cannot separate the components from its to its element. We cannot separate the climate component from the geophysical component. It's a cascading composite hazard. We have to deal with it within this context. If we are talking about induced seismicity, right now we are having more than 100 big dams in Africa. And some of them are monitored, like Aswan Dam in Egypt, where it is monitored since the big earthquake took place in 1981. Some are very poorly monitored, like today we are having the GERD in Ethiopia, and all the Sudanese dams are very poorly damaged. Most of the dams are poorly monitored from seismic point of view. So this is a real challenge that we need to consider in this context. I just draw here a scenario. Just it's not a hypothetical scenario. It could be a realistic scenario. What would happen if we have 6.5 earthquake in Lake Tanganyika? This could trigger a saturated slopes in Albertine Rift collapse. It could close road network. It could trigger a lake seishes or a small tsunami in a lake. It could amplified if this earthquake happening during a flooding season. So this is not just a hypothetical, it's just a scenario that we need to consider such scenarios what would be the impact? What would be after the earthquake if the freshwater resources were disrupted due to a failure of a dam? How this could trigger a cholera risk elevated in the area. And this happened in Sudan, where when the Port Sudan dam last year has collapsed, it was not an earthquake, it was due to poor management of the dam and the flooding. And this has triggered as the freshwater supplies to Port Sudan has stopped, which has triggered a cholera spread in Port Sudan. This is happening during the war, and no aids and no medication were able to arrive in the right time. So it's really, really a complicated situation, and we have to think about this while we are driving. It's not only to drive a seismic hazard map, it's not only going to a shake map or even uh, adding some exposure and expecting losses, but even thinking about complicated scenarios is important. But to approach an early warning, it's not only about thinking about all the thinking about community, because if we succeeded from physical point of view to have the best model, best networks, and we are having complicated computers to calculate all the possible risks, we need to issue an alarming. And this alarm should approach the community. In African context, we are talking about more than the local language, more than 2,000 language. The rate of literacy is 40%, but there is opportunity that 72% have already a mobile phones. So today we have to think about how we can approach the community with the right messaging. What is the best practice? Is it radio and television, or it is a mobile SMS, or it is all of them? Is it in a local language? Is it in the national language? And today, the AI and the tools could help us in developing and translating all of this. But again, it needs to come from the local community up, not coming from top down. We need to approach the communities to engage them into the process, because this process could lead to better clarity in the early warning system, build the credibility and consistency as well. Of course, we are talking about any early warning system, about how this system could be more accommodating for everybody, from gender, from disability, from marginalized group. And in UNDRR reports, 70 to 80% of the disaster deaths in developing countries are from women and child. Disabled people have 2 to 4% more likely to be injured or casualties in a context. So we need to build our early warning system accommodating this, knowing the community, knowing the traditional and the tradition of the communities, of local communities, and how we can integrates all of this. Trust, credibility, and social contrast. Unfortunately, we have a very big gap in trust. Institutional trust, we don't have trust between the communities and the national institutes or the governmental institutes. Always there is this mistrust between the communities, local communities, and what could be coming from government. If you issue an alarm, it could be received very negatively. And the scientific trust, there is no always we are facing this in African context, that the government is not trusted in its local scientists. Always they are looking for international um, consultant as well. So it's very complicated about cultural, historical, political trust that need to be built. And also the trust between the policymaker and researcher. We are having a very big gap between moving our research into policy, moving what we know to what we do. In fact, there is many failures in filling such gap. I mainly I can see it as a incentive problem, because for us as academics, what is our incentives? Our incentives is to publish in high impact international journal, is to maximize our citation, secure research grant, to develop our career and get promoted, have international cooperation. But if you go to the political incentive or the decision maker, they are thinking about how we can win the election if there is an election. And always their objective is short-term deliverables about infrastructure, roads, hospitals, school, or promises for the community for better economical development. So it's not about long-term vision. It's about short-term vision. It's about building new infrastructure rather than maintaining what we have. Because the incentive, if they mitigate a risk, is very low compared to rebuilding after failure. So sometimes the policymakers, they are they see incentives if they are having a better plan for rebuilding rather than a plan for mitigating it. Because mitigation, nobody will feel that mitigation have effect, or if it is succeeded, it should be like that. So we need to bridge this gap, to bridge the academic incentives with the political incentives. We need to find a way that the researcher could have incentives from developing policy paper. Because if I develop a policy paper, it doesn't count on a scopus. It doesn't count on my citation. I don't receive enough incentive for what I develop. And again, whether the politician will take this policy paper and adopt it, no. So it's a very huge gap. We have to think how to fill this gap and find a common incentives that co through co-designing, researchers and politicians and policymakers should be imposed into the process of developing everything. The co-production and generating the knowledge generated should be incentive for both side and could be co-validated. And this should come from the community as well. If we look to our African context on the African Union level, we will find a very good working paper. We will find the AU Agenda 2063, which is prospective to inclusive growth of sustainable development. And part of it is to take the actions for implementation of Sendai framework, and also to develop the African multi-hazard early warning system, which has been established 2021. And we have the different acts in the African Union system. But unfortunately, all of this is very good from theoretical point of view. If we come to the mechanism, there is no clear mechanism to monitor the national early warning system. There is no incentive for linking Sendai framework progress with incentive system. Even the African multi-hazard early warning system, there is no independent evaluation mechanism, and there is no way. I, I don't want to say no way, but we need to develop a way in order to have a third eye monitoring for that to really develop. Unfortunately, this mechanism for early warning has been developed mainly in climate um, hazards. It should be accommodating all hazards, but it's coming from more a climate point of view. So the a few words about the framework of multi-hazard early warning and early action system for Africa, which is AMHEWAS. This was launched in 2021 by the African Union agenda. It's mandated to provide a continuous multi-hazard early warning coverage by 2023. There is a coordination mechanism between the African Union, WMO, UNDRR, IGAD to build existed regional climate center. We already have a regional climate center in the 6 regions of the African Union. So the main idea is to use these regional climate centers as a backbone for the early warning system. Unfortunately, this system is operational for meteorological and hydrological hazard mainly. Seismic hazard, there is no formal way for formalizing this into or any other geophysical hazard until today. The centers receive the Indian Ocean tsunami alerts, but Atlantic Ocean, Mediterranean, they are separate. Right now, the funding which is committed and not guaranteed, just committed, is 45 million. The budget estimation was 380 million US dollar. So we are having 10% of the budget has been committed, and 90% we are having a huge gap to fill. So early warning to early action. And early warning, we start with a hazard detection, as we said, rapid characterization, impact assessment through shake maps and exposure and calculating, warning issuing, message receipt, understanding from your community, and protection action, proactive action, sorry. So if we look to this chain of the 6 steps of the early warning, from 1 to 3, we can say that we are having partially functioning. From 3 to 6, I think we failed to fill this gap. There is a lot of global successes. We have the Japan alert system, Mexico, USA, Indonesia, and I can see Indonesia and Mexico as example, could be a very good example for South-South cooperation that will be more realistic in our African context, more than, of course, Japanese or USA because of the gap. But this sorry, this slide was a bit late, but this slide is if the measuring of the Africa progress against the global DRR benchmark, which is target C, D, E, and G, the reduced economic losses. Unfortunately, direct economic losses as a percentage of GDP in Africa, it was not reduced. It increased in the last 10 years, unfortunately. Reduced in critical infrastructure damage. This is really far until today. Multi-hazard early warning system coverage is far today. International cooperation. Unfortunately, most of the international cooperation in disaster is really not we don't have a pool that can coordinate all of this. It's only a piece and bit here and there. So we don't have an integrated mechanism in order to maintain our objective and seeing using the international cooperation where we want to go with Africa. So I will go to this. Is it hard to go beyond? Yes, it's hard, but it is not impossible. Today, the new technologies offering new horizon for us. As I said, one of the aspects to is one of the very huge challenge for us in Africa is the funding and to provide the monitoring fund. So today with the MEMS sensors, with the DAS systems, the digital acoustic sensing using fiber cables as a sensing, these are systems which much more less expensive and providing promises for better monitoring, especially in our context. The cost of satellite communication today has been decreased dramatically from talking about uh, uh, tens of thousands of US dollars to several hundreds of dollars in order to spend for communication coverage. The low orbit satellites, the GSM coverage, all of this has good promises to reduce the cost. Of course, AI and machine learning and LLMs promises a lot of space. We need to more dig into this. Citizen seismology, it's very important today. Everyone have an accelerometer in their phones. So how we can get use of this, how we can increase the usage of this is really an important challenge. So innovation could provide solutions and could break the barriers we talk about and could promise for this. One important aspect is the funding. Unfortunately, there is no sustainable funding. We should have a sustainable funding mechanism. And this was hope that the African Union could come with a sustainable funding mechanism. So different international and national organizations. And we will not have sustainability until we are having a very national organization. Human capacity, we are lagging. We need to invest more in human capacity. We need to increase the number of seismologists. We need to increase the number of graduate programs in our universities. We need to decrease the brain drain. This, we are having a huge workforce gap in this. We have a lot of young people, young, talented people, and we need to use them in order to build a better system. Of course, the open data is a promise that we are looking all for it. Unfortunately, the seismological monitoring in Africa is really far beyond open data. Most of the countries are very restrictive in sharing data. Some are sharing data, and these data are very important in monitoring seismic activity. And it's very important for neighboring country even to use such data to better understand. Of course, building community, enhancing education, engaging community through social media, through science is a promise. Building codes, unfortunately, we were scanning with UNESCO. We were doing some scanning for how many countries in Africa doesn't have building code, and the numbers are very huge. I will not give numbers, but by end of this year, the questionnaire will be finished, and we will have some statics, real statics about the situation where we are having regulation, where we have regulations, where we have gaps, and we are hoping that the one day we will have some at least minimal building code requirements in Africa, and then we are having our Africa code, and then we have national annexes for each country. Of course, while talking like that, it seems like the image is very dark, but I'm trying to pinpoint the gaps, but still there is a lot of very bright spots. I spoke about the regional centers. Maybe IGAD is one of the centers, and it is not for seismic, but for meteorological center. In fact, in Ethiopia, there was a very successful story where the National Meteorological Institute integrated the multi-hazard forecasting of IGAD, which is mainly climate prediction center, into their national agency. So they could benefit from the regional center into having a more regional and global image and nationalize this into a more alarming and providing the locals with information and vice versa because the national center is providing the regional center with more data. It's an example how we can integrate in different domain, but we should do this also in geophysical hazard and in seismic hazard as well. In South Africa, of course, we are having the seismic network, which is providing some of these stations are available in real time through Iris and Orpheus. And this is very important for neighboring country to use this data and integrate it with local stations to better understand the seismicity. In Morocco, after the 2023, there was a wide reform. It was really about the governance, about the data policy, about the building code, about the early warning investment. And there is a new law in the way for transforming the policy of multi-hazard early warning system. And I believe this will be a very remarkable step in our African context. Lastly, there was an example from Kenya in flood early warning and community-based flood early warning, how we can engage the community and provide the information. And this was a very success story. And I think it is inspiring how we can think about how we can take these lessons into our seismic context. There is a lot of international partnership going, even us as AfSC, African Seismological Commission, is trying to investigate and trying to engage, especially with CTBTOs running many of the seismic stations in Africa, around 37 37 seismic stations are from the IMS are in Africa, and they are maintained and funded by CTBTO, which is very important backbone network, and we need to increase this. Also, CTBTO is cooperating with the African Commission for the training and capacity building for African seismologists. Of course, USGS provided through NIS a lot of very important information. Historically, this was one of the main centers to provide regional seismicity for in Africa. Cooperation with Africa with European Union is very important, not only in Copernicus program but in many other programs. And right now, we as African Seismological Commission is discussing with EPOS how we can build our system, our very basic open data system to start with what is available, just what is available, provide it, make it available to everybody, have a unified platform, and then step by step this will develop. South-South cooperation is very important. Right now, we are talking with Latin American groups, how we can learn from them, how they built their regional networks. China today is very active in seismic monitoring, and they are active in Africa today in many investment in infrastructure. And we are talking to them how we can benefit from their network into building more robust monitoring in Africa. The Indian Ocean tsunami alarming system, this is very related to East Africa. It's very important to have a common platform for that. So I was thinking, what should Africa have if we are talking about Africa resilient future? I think we need to have monitoring stations with a station spacing of around 100 kilometers. So we have more than 500 new stations in Africa. That's a dream, but we should have. Maybe it could be with new technologies like with MEMS, with fiber optics, whatever, but it could be how we can connect uh, different communities like telecommunication community to our seismic community to build a better monitoring. That's an important question. The real-time data sharing is important for all the nations. Today, we are talking in the African Union about open or data sharing policies between countries in disaster. We had several meetings. In climate data, there was a lot of progress. We are hoping that in geophysical data as well. The multi-hazard early warning in every African nation should be there. If we didn't succeed by 2030, we should succeed soon. Science and policy gap, again, this should be bridged. I increasing number of training for seismologists, seismic risk, it's important. But is it really important to do this? Is it really why this cannot wait? The cost of inaction is very high. In 2023, Morocco earthquake, 3,000 has died, 3.8 billion US dollar was the losses. This is because they didn't have early warning system. In 2023, the Derna flood has 11,000 deaths. So a flood which is supposed to have an early warning much, much better than seismic monitoring, has triggered 11,000 deaths. So today, the cost of inaction is very huge. If we talked about Japan in 1995 until it had since 1995 it had reduced the deaths from earthquake by 90%. Bangladesh from 1970 cyclone deaths has been reduced 99%. Chile, magnitude 8.8 earthquake, 500 deaths. Can we imagine? In Haiti, the 7 earthquake has triggered 220,000. So this is the difference. This is this is a real cost of not having early warning system. I will stop here and I'm sorry if I didn't provide answers because I have questions more than answers for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful talk. The floor is open for questions. Please, if you have some questions for Prof.
Okay, well, may I have a question here? Actually, there's some comment. Thank you very much. It was quite interesting. I just thought about which area you didn't touch. I think everything you touch. Yeah, the point is what is the message to the young generation actually when you are quite pessimistic about everything related to Africa in terms of at least the seismic operations and meaning that it's delivering this knowledge to the authorities and so on. But I think it is a problem not only in seismicity related issues, but it's a problem in general in hazard and disasters and specifically risk. And the point of you mentioned, because there are many, many questions, but it's impossible now to go, and I have to leave in a few minutes. And the question or maybe comment is that it's, I think it's in Africa is needed integrated research more than ever. Actually, it was started time ago, and I know that 15 years ago I organized some event related to extreme events and societal impact in Africa. And it was in Pretoria. And I know that there is a very good so-called peri-peri thesis program, which is an educational program, and they are really connected well in Africa, doing well and educating people related to disasters. And I think it's more efforts is needed to create also the the multi-hazard community who will work together with social sciences, engineers, and others to integrate this knowledge, meaning that it's to create at least one or two or three, depending on the funding indeed, the centers, but the centers it's already started to be, it could be part, for example, of this climatic center, and it would be possible to speak to UNDRR and WMO to extend these things in terms of the the bringing integration, as you mentioned about this integration of different type of hazard together with the climatic hazard, which is a WMO is the most interesting. Yeah, and this is a quite would be good idea. And another issue about the international cooperation, actually there are a lot of international cooperation related to the integrated research. And specifically there is a program, integrated research on disaster risk, which was established about 15 years ago by International Science Council and the UNDRR. And it's developing very well established. It's the main international center of excellence. And for example, these one or two such centers could be quite well if it would be developed in Africa. And because there are many other countries, but not unfortunately in Africa. I understand that because the funding not comes from this program. Program develops some ideas about what can be done. But anyway, I wanted to hear just a few words about this. What you would wish to the, let's say, this institution where you give a talk where there is mostly theoretical people there is working and there is young scientists, early careers, and so on, about the way how this basic knowledge can contribute to disaster risk reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. It's really, I am really optimistic, to be frankly, because I'm trying to touch the gaps. There is a lot of things, as you highlighted, there is a lot of good things are going on. There is a lot of motivations. There is a lot of young people are doing very great things. But we need to pinpoint the gaps in order to address it. To be frankly, I can see ICTP. I am one of the ICTP graduate. I was a junior associate in ICTP 20 years ago. So that's how I started my career. I started my career in Trieste, visiting Trieste 3 months a year, doing research with many very good qualified scientists, and most importantly, networking with my colleagues in Africa. This is the most important. I think you highlighted this. We need to integrate. If we are thinking about resources in African countries, it is not much. If we are thinking about resources in Africa, it's enough. So if we can integrate this, and I think ICTP in Rwanda could be a starting point. I started 20 years ago in Trieste. Today, I believe we can have many starting here in Africa. And from this, we can have even more and more. Because, as I said, we are lagging not only on a policy level, but even on understanding our hazard, on understanding the hazard itself. There is a lot of open questions on new technologies. Today, we are talking about the DAS systems. We don't have even a prototype DAS station in Africa. We need to have this. MEMS, local sensors, all of this could be coming from young people. I was providing this presentation on purpose, not to provide what's going on, what's good things is going on. I was hoping that young people are here so they hear the gaps, so they can provide new ideas, provide their innovative input into this. Because I consider myself an old man already, but already we are oriented. We are having our mindset already oriented. If we started providing, I can see this, the solution for this like that and like that and like that, we will go back. I just believe in young people. They have the vision. They have better visions than us, and we don't want to limit their vision to our knowledge, because sometimes we are biased by many things, not only scientific, but even social, political, everything. So I purposely put the gaps, and I want to stress, don't be disappointed. There is a lot of good things going on, but there is a lot of gap you can contribute to. You can innovate and provide your inputs to.
Thank you very much. And I am very sorry, but I have to leave immediately. Okay, enjoy. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Prof, let me ask one. Is there like an idea for a rapid response team for emergencies in Africa?
Yes, there is. I remember in our first General Assembly for the African Seismological Commission, it was Ray Durheim, and he is around here. He was proposing having a scientific rapid response team. And at that time, even I was put into theater to coordinate this team. Today, we are having in ESB a commission for scientific studies, or it's very similar to the idea is post earthquake scientific studies teams. Unfortunately, the rapid response team in Africa was not able to be very active because of two challenges. The first challenge was funding. The second challenge was the political context. I will give two examples. We could have funding. We could, because already in the team, we could have three seismic stations available for post earthquake. It was donated by NRIAG in Egypt. Just in case of any earthquake in Africa, we could mobilize this station directly. We sent a request two times. One time it was after El House earthquake in Morocco in 2023. And we received a negative response because of the Morocco government has decided to put priorities for aid and for rescue teams, not for scientific teams. And unfortunately, even our Moroccan colleagues very few could access and very late. The other example was in Ethiopia, in the seismic swarm in Afar region in 2024. And unfortunately, because of the security challenges, we couldn't go there. So right now we are thinking what the right context, because again, this rapid response team is very good idea, but it's working in Europe, in America. We have to think about our African context. Can we find or develop something which is suitable our African context? This is the $1 million question. I think Ray could comment on that.
Yes. Thank you, Mohamed. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
No. I mean, it's a little. I mean, we need to celebrate the small successes, and you've mentioned a couple. I mean, also here in Southern Africa in 2017, there was an earthquake in Botswana, and our South African Geological Survey, they mobilized stations that did aftershock recording and got a very nice focal mechanism. And there have also been instances in Tanzania, I think after, I forget the date of the earthquake, but when a team went out there and did looked at the damage that was to buildings. And also there have been cases in, let's say, in South Africa and Namibia where there have been earthquakes, and there have been some stations mobilized to look at the swarms or the aftershocks. So these are still, I suppose, very local efforts. And I mean, our vision was to have a team and equipment pretty much on standby with visas pre-approved and with questionnaires in the local languages. So within maybe 24 or 48 hours, we could be on the ground and asking questions, having our instruments deployed. And yeah, we've got a way to go, but let's not lose hope. And I mean, also, let me compliment the African Seismological Commission that was sort of launched in 2014, and it's grown since then. I mean, just last year there was an excellent meeting in Windhoek, and the CTBTO provided some very good training courses there. And so certainly, you know, and it's attached to IASB, which is a international organization with one hopes with a very long life into the future. And so I think it's it got a good base and a good foundation. We've been working hard to get funding from EPOS in terms of the volcano monitoring. And we put in a strong proposal, and I guess it was rated highly, but it was like number 3rd on the list, so it didn't get any funding. But you know, it's the kind of thing you dust it off and you will try again. And that from the European side, that was João Fonseca from the University of Lisbon, who's also worked here in Africa. He's also got citizenship of Cape Verde. He's worked with Africa Array for a year, who was driving that. So that's another avenue we can knock on. Also, the NSF, and USAID has supported work in Africa for a long time, but with the current regime in the US, sadly, a lot of that funding has been cut. But even so, we managed to sneak a little bit of funding for a workshop that was held in Johannesburg towards the end of last year. And we had about a dozen people from the rest of Africa attending that. We don't yet have sufficient funding to subsidize, I suppose, or support monitoring systems, but we hope to encourage collaboration between African scientists using the data that's in repositories such as the one at IRIS or and in a future African data center. So yeah, I guess like Mohammed, I'm an old man. I don't want to squash ideas. It's but there are seeds and there are some green shoots. So thank you, Mohammed. I think that was an excellent overview of the real situation right now, the challenges we face.
Thank you. Any other question? Okay, I have one last one from me. I mean, so it's obvious that one of the main challenges is data sharing among research institutes or monitoring centers in Africa. how do we mitigate this? Because it's something that a lot of people have touched on, and we try to bring everybody on board. But I mean, there is some progress, but still, so far we're so far away from achieving a very homogeneous data sharing.
Yeah, data sharing is a real challenge, but we could mitigate this in different ways. We could mitigate this in starting. We should start even going back and sharing arrival times, not a waveform. Start the sharing, and the process will come on. So we need to, this is something also in the African Seismological Commission, we are pushing to have African Seismological Center, just some center, and member states should send anything, starting from waveform, of course, up to arrivals and locations. This, eh, again, if we start engaging, working, learning to work with each other, by time this will develop. And I believe also it's integrated events like capacity building activities, workshops, working together on our own data is important. So Dan comes with his data, Mohammed comes with his data, we come to the same room, we work together, we start appreciating how we can merge what are the challenges we are having. So this is the idea of having, as Ray said, there is a lot of success stories of projects or groups working together in Africa, the East African group, so the North African group. There is different groups working together, and through this we could enhance the data sharing policies. Tomorrow we will not have open source data, but we could approach this through working together. If we look to the publications between the African scientists, mostly it's very low. Most of the cooperation is coming towards Europe or US and engaging different Africans. So we have to start cooperating with each other. We have to start co-publishing with each other. And later on, this will come through. And that's why we try with the African Seismological Commission since the beginning, since 2014, as Ray highlighted. It's every General Assembly, we should have early career training course, capacity building, even for networking, to know each other, to know your colleagues, because they are facing the same challenges. We could find a lot of opportunities. Again, Africa is full of resources, and we have to integrate our resources in order to have a real impact globally.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other question? Okay. Prof, I would like to thank you once again for this wonderful talk. And to everyone else, thanks for joining us today, and hope to see you next month. So we end it here.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.